One day, I came into a circumstance I never would have guessed possible. It all began when I visited a doctor with my husband on a routine checkup. What was meant to be a standard appointment turned my life upside down. With a solemn look, Dr. Lawrence delivered some startling information concerning my husband. His seriousness let me know this was no joke. I experienced a tsunami of panic and incredulity. Once someone I had looked after through his illness, my spouse now caused anxiety and worry. Dr. Lawrence advised me to give my safety top priority and that I might have to separate from my husband. His statements made me anxious and overwhelmed. Known by most as Betty Friedan, I am a 50-year-old employee of a top pharmaceutical business having committed 10 years of work. That spot, which provides solace and a feeling of community, has evolved into my second house. I have stayed full-time despite my age, winning the respect and appreciation of my coworkers. Although few individuals my age are still employed as I am, I have never minded. Part of my commitment to my work was that I stayed single till 4 years ago. Gerald, my manager, and I had a tight relationship partially because we were both unmarried. Once he inquired playfully whether I would ever be married. I realized it was all in good humor, but could have misinterpreted his remark. I was seeing Richard, who would eventually be my husband, covertly about that time. Like me, Richard was not interested in having children. He was a bit older, had passed marriage and divorce. Seeking company for our later years, we met via a marital advisory service. We decided to keep our relationship secret, so we never told anyone about our plans. Even though our manager made light-hearted jokes about marriage, Richard and I finally quietly wedded the knot without a ceremony, just signing the required paperwork at City Hall. Though I was astonished by the easiness of the process, I was looking forward to our future together. But now, faced with Dr. Lawrence's alarming advice, I was forced to reassess everything. My feelings of compassion for my sick husband were now tangled with fear and uncertainty. Dr. Lawrence's words echoed in my mind, urging me to take action for my own safety. As I stood there, trying to process the situation, I realized I needed to make a decision, and fast. The life I had known and the future I had envisioned were suddenly on uncertain ground. I'm L.A., and my husband Richard works at a factory. To be honest, I earn more than he does. Richard started his job there right after finishing high school. As for me, I grew up in an orphanage and always dreamed of being independent. That's why I didn't want to quit my job at the pharmaceutical company, even after we got married. I loved my job too much. When Richard and I tied the knot, I immediately told my manager, Gerald, about it. He congratulated me, but I could tell he had mixed feelings. Maybe he felt a bit lonely because I, his buddy in singleness, got married first. I tried teasing him about it, but he brushed it off, so I let the matter drop. Despite Gerald's reaction, I was over the moon about starting a new chapter with Richard. I imagined all the wonderful things our future would hold, but reality turned out to be less shiny than my dreams. Life as newlyweds was pretty standard. Not much changed for me. I kept working, and the biggest change was probably moving to a more rural area and commuting by car instead of bus. Richard and I shared my old car because he didn't have one. About a year into our marriage, though, things started to get rocky. Richard began showing signs of depression. He seemed off, hardly eating his breakfast, getting lost in his thoughts, and even getting small things like condiments mixed up. His clothes didn't match, and he became quieter at work and at home. Although I've always appreciated Richard's quiet strength, his silence became too heavy, making it feel like I was living alone. This loneliness crept up on me as I noticed these small but significant changes in him. It dawned on me that Richard might be dealing with a mental health issue. Watching someone you care about struggle without knowing how to help is incredibly hard. I decided to take Richard to a clinic that specializes in mind and body health, where he was diagnosed with depression. I had a basic understanding of depression, but hearing the diagnosis made my world feel a bit dimmer. The doctor explained that the best way to tackle depression is to address its root cause directly. However, pinpointing the exact reason for Richard's depression was challenging. He had been working at the same factory for years without any issues, and nothing significant had changed in his job. If anything, I worried that perhaps our marriage had somehow contributed to his state. During our conversations with the doctor, I assured him that we were living a content life and couldn't identify any direct pressures at home that might have led to Richard's condition. The doctor encouraged us to return if we noticed any changes or had any insights into potential causes of his depression. Despite multiple visits to the clinic, we couldn't find the root cause of Richard's distress. Over time, his depression only deepened. On his worst days, Richard would barely get out of bed, plagued by headaches or calling in sick to work. His appetite vanished, and he lost a noticeable amount of weight. Eventually, he was unable to continue working and had to leave his job. Richard felt terribly guilty for putting all the financial burden on me, but I reassured him that I was okay with working. My primary concern was his well-being. It was tough to see him so affected, and I constantly worried about him, especially when I was at work. There was an incident where he went out and couldn't find his way back home, which made me fear he was battling not just depression, but potentially dementia as well. This possibility added to my stress. When colleagues asked about how things were going, I had to admit that Richard wasn't improving. Seeing someone you love struggle so much without a clear way to help is incredibly difficult. Gerald noticed I was looking particularly worn out one day and handed me an energy drink. Drinking it made me feel a little better, and I was touched by his gesture of support. He reminded me that we're all in this journey together, and his words nearly brought me to tears. With everything going on with Richard, I hadn't realized how much stress I'd been piling up on myself. It became clear that I needed to keep myself together, or else I might break down too. So I threw myself into work, trying to maintain some normalcy in our lives. Years have flown by, and things with Richard haven't improved. In fact, they've only gotten worse. As our third wedding anniversary approached, I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel for his condition. Then, one morning, I noticed our car wasn't where it should have been. Confused, I checked again, but the car was definitely missing. Since Richard's diagnosis, I was the only one who drove it. I hadn't used the car since the day before, which meant it should have been at home. Concerned, I asked Richard if he knew anything about where the car might be. He casually mentioned he thought it was there when he got home yesterday. I remembered he had gone out for a bit while I was at work. The doctor had suggested he try walking or jogging to help him cope. If the car was there when he returned, it must have disappeared sometime during the night. With the car gone, I had no choice but to use public transport, which made me about 10 minutes late for work. I explained the situation to Gerald, who was understanding but puzzled about the car's whereabouts. He wondered if Richard might have taken it, but I dismissed the idea given Richard's condition and his aversion to driving since falling ill. It didn't make sense. Despite Richard's occasional lapses in memory and frequent mood swings, I couldn't imagine him being responsible for the missing car. The mystery of the car added yet another layer of complexity to our already challenging situation. Right after realizing the car was gone, I didn't waste any time reporting it to the police, hoping it would turn up soon. But deep down, a nagging worry haunted me that it might be gone for good. As if that wasn't enough, something else strange occurred. On the day I was supposed to get my paycheck, I went to the bank to take out some money and noticed that my personal bank account was empty. I was taken aback. We do have a shared account, which I checked next, only to find it was also at zero. This left me completely baffled. Richard and I shared the joint account, but he had no access to my personal account, nor did he know its PIN. Yet somehow all our savings had vanished. The cold wave of shock hit me hard. Once home, I confronted Richard. I asked him if he knew anything about the missing funds from our joint account. He seemed genuinely confused and denied knowing anything about it. Considering his state of mind due to depression, I hesitated to press further, fearing it might add to his stress. Richard, with his gaze fixed on the ceiling, seemed distant, lost in one of his frequent dazes attributed to his condition. It made me wonder if he could have actually taken the money. Planning to bring this issue up with the police, I was overwhelmed by the double blow of losing both our car and our savings. The financial pinch was sharp, made worse by my lack of a family safety net, having grown up in an orphanage with no parents to turn to for help. Amidst these troubles, it was suggested that we switch Richard to a larger hospital with more resources than the small community psychiatric clinic we'd been using. The clinic had reached its limits in what it could do for him and recommended a general hospital for better care. They even provided a referral letter. So we decided to make our first visit to the general hospital, taking a taxi there. The experience was new and a bit daunting for me, and throughout the journey, Richard remained quiet, lost in his own thoughts. As we arrived at the hospital, taking a deep breath, I walked into the hospital, handing over the referral letter at the reception, bracing myself for a bit of a wait. Given it was a busy general hospital, the lobby was crowded with patients, each waiting for their turn. After around an hour, Richard was finally called in for his consultation. While he went inside, I took out a book to pass the time, but barely had Richard entered the doctor's office when a nurse approached me. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Simmons?" she asked. I confirmed, and she mentioned the doctor wanted to see me. I was used to discussing Richard's condition, so I assumed it was a similar situation that time, and followed her, albeit with a bit of anxiety. The nurse led me to a different room where I was greeted by a doctor who looked about a decade my senior, with graying hair and a kind demeanor. Before I could even settle in, I asked if this was about Richard's condition. He nodded gravely, and I prepared myself for potentially bad news. The doctor's next words took me completely by surprise, however. He urged me to distance myself from my husband, revealing that Richard had been arrested for fraud 10 years ago. My mind spun with confusion. Why was this coming up now, during a routine medical visit? The doctor explained his suspicions about Richard's depression, suggesting that he might be pretending. He recounted recognizing Richard from a surgery 10 years ago, where he had treated a deep cut on Richard's leg. The revelation was jarring. Here I was thinking we were addressing Richard's mental health, only to discover his hidden past and a possible deception about his current state. The doctor mentioned recognizing a large scar on Richard's right leg. Everything started to make sense. I knew of the scar, but never knew its origin, as Richard had never mentioned it. Learning that the doctor before me was the one who had treated Richard's injury years ago felt like an unbelievable twist of fate. The story unfolded further when the doctor revealed that Richard had injured himself during a dispute with his former wife, a dispute that arose because he had swindled her. He had stolen her luxury items and money. Shockingly, he had also feigned dementia during that time, manipulating his wife into lowering her guard before committing the fraud. This pattern of pretending to be ill to facilitate his deceit was appalling. Hearing about Richard's criminal past and his arrest was staggering. I hadn't looked into Richard's background before marrying him, being alone most of my life. I was just happy to find someone willing to be my partner. The doctor's stern warning that Richard could be a danger to me sent chills down my spine. There was a seriousness in his tone that made it clear this was no laughing matter. The realization hit me hard. I had been deceived. In the days that followed, I struggled to act normal around Richard while secretly planning my next steps. I decided to set up surveillance cameras around our home to watch Richard's activities when I wasn't there. About a week later, I noticed a missing watch and bag. Reviewing the camera footage, I saw Richard leave the house with them and return later with a wad of cash, looking suspiciously pleased with himself. His demeanor did not match that of someone suffering from depression. This footage confirmed my worst fears. Richard was behind the theft of my belongings, the car, and our savings. Facing the hard evidence of his deceit was crushing. Richard had lied to and manipulated me, betraying the trust I had placed in him. It was clear that I needed to take significant action against someone who had pretended to be vulnerable and in need of care only to exploit my compassion and generosity. The realization that Richard had betrayed my trust was unbearable. I had dedicated my life to working and caring for what I thought was a sick partner. A divorce felt too insignificant a response to the depth of deception I had endured. It was clear we needed to part ways, but I wanted more than just a separation. I wanted Richard to truly understand the gravity of his actions and to make amends for the harm he had caused. With a heavy heart and tears threatening to spill, I gathered the divorce papers and meticulously filled them out with all the necessary details. The following day, pretending everything was normal, I informed Richard I'd be stepping out briefly. I had already taken a day off from work, explaining the urgency of my situation to my employer, who had agreed to my sudden leave. At the police station, I presented my case, showing the officers the footage I had captured of Richard's deceit. Initially, they were hesitant to proceed based solely on the video. However, after verifying with the pawn shop where Richard had sold the stolen items and locating my car being sold as a used vehicle, the evidence against him began to mount. It was also confirmed that he had unlawfully accessed my bank accounts, and suspicion about his feigned depression was raised. As the truth unraveled, I was overwhelmed by a complex mix of relief and sorrow. The police decided to act swiftly given Richard's criminal history and prepared to arrest him. Returning home with the officers in the early afternoon, I found Richard at home, visibly startled by my unexpected presence and the sight of the police. Despite the divorce papers in my hand, his attention was fixed on the officers as one of them declared his arrest for fraud. Richard protested, claiming his depression as a defense, but I knew better. The doctor from the general hospital had already shed light on the likelihood of his deceit regarding his mental health condition. In that moment, facing both the legal consequences of his actions and the end of our marriage, Richard's facade began to crumble. The decision to take this course of action was difficult, but necessary to protect myself and seek justice for the betrayal and manipulation I had endured. On my recent visit to the hospital, a doctor recognized Richard from his past actions. He shared that Richard had once feigned dementia to trick his former wife and expressed doubts about Richard's current claims of depression. Despite these serious accusations, Richard remained unshaken in front of the police, dismissively denying everything. It was as if his history of deceit had prepared him for this moment, showing no sign of guilt or remorse. Richard challenged us, demanding proof of his fraudulent actions. His boldness was baffling, especially with the police right there, ready to arrest him based on solid evidence. It was a clear indication of his habitual manipulation and his underestimation of the situation's seriousness. For 4 years he had lied to me, taking advantage of my trust to steal from me and misuse my goodwill. Yet, in a twisted turn of blame, Richard suggested it was my fault for being too trusting, insulting me further. His odd audacity was astounding. I had supported him, hoping for his recovery, only to be repaid with betrayal and scorn. In that moment, my patience vanished. I declared my intention to seek legal advice and pursue alimony, urging him to face the consequences of his actions. At the police station, my outbursts surprised even the officers, but it seemed to shake Richard's composure. Finally, as the police handcuffed him, Richard's defiance crumbled. He looked defeated, his arrogance replaced with frustration as he was led away. Watching the scene, I felt detached, as if observing someone else's life unraveling. Since the doctor's warning, nothing seemed real anymore, yet here I was, facing the harsh truth of my situation. I was determined to move forward from the chaos Richard had created. Watching Richard being led away by the police felt surreal, almost like a scene from a dream. This moment marked a turning point, allowing me to envision a return to my life before the chaos of marriage engulfed it. Though a sense of relief washed over me, Knowing I wouldn't spend my future under Richard's manipulative control, a wave of loneliness followed. Having waited more than 47 years to marry, the prospect of solitude once again cast a shadow over my newfound freedom. 2 months later, our divorce was finalized. The process had been slightly delayed due to Richard's arrest, but by the time everything was official, my emotions had settled, enabling me to reflect on our shared history with a clear mind. Richard's future was uncertain, facing imprisonment for his second offense. I could only hope this experience would lead him to sincerely reconsider his choices. In the wake of our marriage, which had dissolved into nothing more than a disillusioning memory, I found myself pondering my next steps over a simple lunch at work. It was then that my boss, Gerald, approached with a casual yet loaded comment as he joined me with his store-bought hot dog lunch. "I think you'd be just fine if you were with me," he remarked almost offhandedly. His words caught me off guard, and it took a moment for their full weight to sink in, leaving me momentarily flustered. "Yes, I'm serious," he added, seeing my hesitation, his tone smooth yet sincere. I was speechless, my lunch momentarily forgotten as I processed his proposition. Gerald then returned to work, leaving me to contemplate his unexpected offer in a daze. The idea of a romantic relationship with Gerald had never crossed my mind, yet I couldn't deny the care and stability he had always shown me. His steady presence and responsible nature suddenly cast him in a new light. Despite my initial reaction, as I continued eating, the seeds of possibility Gerald had planted began to take root, suggesting a future I hadn't dared to imagine until now. The thought of inviting Gerald out for a meal after work sparked a warmth within me, kindling a sense of hope for the future. Perhaps this was the perfect moment to embark on a new journey, to explore the possibility of happiness and companionship once again. The idea of stepping out of my comfort zone and into a new beginning with someone who had shown me kindness and support felt both thrilling and comforting. Tonight, I decided, could be the start of something new and beautiful.
Hi, I'm Emily. It was just another long night at the diner, wiping down tables and balancing trays heavier than my sleep-deprived eyelids. Between shifts at the diner and my weekend gig at the bookstore, I was barely scraping by, doing what I could to keep my head above water. College wasn't cheap, and while my classmates obsessed over grades and party plans, I was counting pennies and sacrificing sleep. My life hadn't always been this balancing act between jobs and studies. Growing up, I was the apple of my father's eye, or at least I thought I was. But everything changed when my mom passed away. Not long after, my dad, Richard, married Clarissa, a woman closer in age to me than him. She was always draped in clothes and jewels, desperately trying to appear younger. Since then, home felt more like a battleground than a sanctuary. I was told my college tuition was covered by the trust fund my mom had set up for me, a final act to secure my future. But by my sophomore year, financial cracks started to show, and I began picking up more shifts. I told myself it was just for extra book money or a little cushion for emergencies. Then, everything came crashing down on a chilly Thursday morning. Between classes, I got a call from Mr. Thompson at the bank. His voice was calm, professional, but the weight of his words made my knees buckle. "Miss Tyler, there's an issue with your tuition payment. It seems there are insufficient funds in your account." "Insufficient funds?" I repeated, my voice shaky with confusion. "That can't be right. Can you check again? It's supposed to be covered by my trust fund." "There's been significant activity in the account," Mr. Thompson explained, his tone sympathetic. I hung up, my mind racing. Significant activity? Depleted? These weren't words that belonged to a fully funded trust. Something was very wrong. That evening, I confronted Richard over dinner. The dining table felt less like home and more like a boardroom as I laid out the facts. "Dad, there's a problem with the trust fund. The bank says my tuition hasn't been paid because there's almost nothing left. Do you know anything about this?" Richard's eyes flicked to Clarissa, who was pushing her food around her plate without interest. After a tense pause, he sighed, his mask of ignorance slipping. "Emily, I had to use some of that money. We had expenses, and I thought I could replace it before you noticed. Expenses? I repeated, my anger rising. What expenses could be worth risking my future? Clarissa spoke up then, her voice cold and dismissive. Life isn't just about your tuition, Emily. We have needs too. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping the floor. This isn't just about needs, Clarissa. It's about trust. Something that clearly doesn't matter in this family. That night, with a heart heavy from betrayal, I packed a bag and left. I couldn't stay in that house with the truth hanging in the air like smoke. I moved in with a friend, determined to find out how my future had been sold off for Clarissa's jewels and Richard's lies. The following days turned into weeks, and each passing moment deepened the weight of my father's betrayal. My trust fund, my future, had been bled dry, not for emergencies, but for lavish, unnecessary indulgences. The realization lit a fire in me, and I was determined to uncover every deceitful transaction Richard had made. Between jobs and classes, I combed through bank statements and financial records, slowly piecing together the truth. The withdrawals lined up with Richard's shopping sprees and high society events with Clarissa, flaunting their wealth while my future crumbled. One evening, when I knew Clarissa wouldn't be home, I confronted Richard again. The bank statements lay on the coffee table like an indictment as I waited. When Richard walked in and saw the papers, his usual composure cracked. "What is this, Emily?" he asked, his voice teetering between defiance and fear. "You know exactly what this is," I replied, my voice steady, ready to face the truth. Despite the turmoil churning inside, I kept my voice steady. "Look at these numbers, Dad. Look at what you've done." Richard picked up a statement, his eyes scanning the damning figures. Slowly, he set it down and sank into a chair, his posture deflated. "It was supposed to be temporary," he mumbled, his voice low, heavy with regret. "I thought I could make it right before you ever found out." "Temporary?" I scoffed, the bitterness in my voice cutting through the air. "You gambled with my future. How could you ever think that was okay?" For a fleeting moment, Richard's eyes met mine, and I saw a glimpse of the man who had raised me, the father I once admired. But that flicker quickly faded under the weight of his actions. It was all for her, wasn't it? All for Clarissa, I pressed, needing to hear him say it. "Yes," he whispered, the admission hanging between us like a heavy fog. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly across the floor. "I trusted you, Dad, and you chose her happiness over your own daughter's future." Without another word, I walked out, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed my resolve. That night, lying in a small room I now called home, the weight of my broken family ties pressed down on me. Cutting communication with Richard was painful but necessary. Each time my phone rang, I ignored it. Every unanswered message was a reminder that I needed space, a plan, something public and irreversible that would dismantle the facade Richard and Clarissa had built. As the dawn broke over another sleepless night, an idea began to form. A plan that would not only expose Richard's betrayal, but humiliate Clarissa in the process. The perfect setting. The upcoming charity gala, where they always basked in the spotlight. It was only a week away, and everything was coming together more smoothly than I had dared to hope. My unlikely ally in this scheme was Sarah, once Clarissa's close friend, but now a scorned exile who had felt the sting of betrayal just as deeply as I had. We spent countless nights huddled over my laptop in her cramped living room, piecing together evidence of the lavish expenditures that had drained my trust fund. Each transaction traced back to a specific piece of jewelry that Clarissa flaunted on social media. The paper trail was irrefutable. Bank statements, receipts, and photos of Clarissa draped in jewels at high society events. "Imagine her face when everyone knows the truth," Sarah said one evening, a mischievous spark in her eyes. "I don't want to imagine it," I replied, my resolve hardening. "I want to see it." The night of the gala arrived, my nerves buzzing with anticipation and determination. Dressed in a simple but elegant black dress, I entered the venue, my eyes scanning the crowd for Clarissa and the blogger I had contacted, Lisa, a sharp-eyed woman with a reputation for exposing the hidden scandals of the city's elite. As expected, Clarissa was dripping in diamonds, jewels bought with the future that had been stolen from me. Seeing her stirred a mix of anger and resolve. I spotted Lisa across the room and approached her discreetly. "See the necklace and earrings?" I whispered, nodding toward Clarissa. "They're supposedly gifts from her loving husband. But there's more to that story." I handed Lisa a folder filled with the evidence Sarah and I had gathered. Lisa's eyes widened as she flipped through the documents. "This is gold," she murmured, already pulling out her phone, likely planning her next steps to break the story. As the night wore on, Sarah and I watched from the shadows as Lisa subtly pointed her camera at Clarissa, capturing the diamonds that now glittered with deceit. She mingled among the guests, weaving the real story into conversations. Rumors began to ripple through the crowd like wildfire. When Lisa finally posted the expose online, complete with photos and irrefutable evidence, the reaction was immediate. Guests whispered, their eyes darting between their phones and Clarissa. The room buzzed with the energy of scandal, the air thick with shock and schadenfreude. Richard's face turned pale as he read the breaking news on a guest's phone, his eyes locking with mine from across the room. In that moment, the carefully crafted facade of the doting husband shattered, leaving behind only the raw guilt of a man who had gambled and lost everything. Clarissa's reaction was even more dramatic. She clutched her necklace as if it could protect her from the judgment crashing down around her. But the jewels no longer sparkled with luxury. They glittered with lies and theft. As the evening came to a close, Richard and Clarissa hurriedly left the gala, avoiding the eyes of their former friends and allies. Sarah gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze, a silent acknowledgement of our victory. That night, as I lay in bed, the adrenaline slowly ebbed, and for the first time in months, I felt a wave of true relief. The truth wasn't whispered in corners, it had been shouted from the rooftops. I hadn't exposed their deceit for revenge, but for justice, to reclaim my future and prove it was no one's to gamble with but my own. The aftermath of the gala was swift and unforgiving. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the story of Richard's misuse of my trust fund, spurred by Clarissa's greed, had spread across every local news outlet. Lisa's blog post, armed with the evidence Sarah and I had uncovered, went viral, shared by those hungry for both scandal and justice. Richard's once impeccable reputation crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny. Professional relationships that had taken him decades to build evaporated overnight, with colleagues and business partners distancing themselves, unwilling to be associated with his deceit. His once tight social circle unraveled as friends turned their backs, condemning his actions. But the consequences didn't end with social ostracism. The trust fund, meant to support not just my education but the future of other family members, had been compromised. Upon learning of the breach, my aunt and uncle, whose children were also beneficiaries, filed a lawsuit against Richard, seeking reparations for the misallocated funds. The ensuing legal battles drained whatever sympathy anyone might have had left for him. As for Clarissa, the backlash shattered her social standing. Humiliated and shunned by her peers, she found her position in the community untenable. With her image tarnished beyond repair, she left Richard, seeking refuge far away from the judgmental eyes of those they had once mingled with. Meanwhile, an unexpected silver lining emerged. The community, touched by my story and impressed by my resolve, rallied behind me. Local business owners and residents set up a community fund to help cover my tuition and living expenses. Their generosity was overwhelming, reminding me that for every act of deceit, there is often an act of kindness. Thanks to their support, I was able to return to my studies, free from the financial burden that had once weighed so heavily on me. I moved into a small apartment, modest, but mine, and reveled in the independence it offered. It was a fresh start, a space that symbolized my freedom from the shadows of betrayal that had once loomed so large. Through it all, I had learned the value of self-reliance and the importance of holding those we love accountable. The betrayal I experienced was deep and painful, but it taught me resilience and the power of standing up for what is right. With the support of my community and my own newfound strength, I embraced my studies with renewed passion. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. Every step I took was a testament to the power of truth and the enduring spirit of a woman determined to reclaim her future. And now my story was no longer about what had been lost. It was about everything I had gained.
Hey, I'm Steven. At 28, life's going great. I'm crushing it as a software engineer, and AI is my jam. I spend my days making smart tech even smarter. Got a swanky downtown apartment, a car that turns heads, and the best part, my girlfriend, Melissa. Steven, you're such a nerd. she laughs, watching me tinker with my latest project. This nerd's going to change the world someday, I grin back. We've been together for 2 years, and she's a firecracker, always keeping me on my toes as a marketing exec. We just click, you know. Same wavelength, always supporting each other's dreams. Lately, I've been thinking about taking things to the next level. I've got the ring and everything. You seem distracted lately, Melissa says over dinner one night. Everything okay at work? Work's fine, I assure her. Just thinking about us, about the future. Her eyes light up, but I keep my poker face. No spoilers yet. But before I propose, there's one last thing I want to do. Ask her parents, the Thompsons, for their blessing. The Thompsons are big shots in the city, always throwing fancy parties and rubbing elbows with the elite. The first time I met them, it was all smiles and handshakes, but something felt off. It's a pleasure to meet you, Stephen, Mr. Thompson said, his tone smooth but distant. Melissa speaks highly of you. We're always excited to meet Melissa's friends, Mrs. Thompson added, her emphasis on friends stinging more than I'd like to admit. Thank God for my best friend Jake. We've been tight since college, and he's always watching my back. Over beers one night, Jake said, "Those Thompsons give me the creeps." You sure about this? I shrugged it off. They're not that bad. Just watch yourself, he warned. People like that, they play by different rules. His words stuck with me, though. Still, I love Melissa, and I want to do this right. So, I decide to ask the Thompsons for their blessing. When I hint at my plan, Melissa beams. You're really going to ask my parents? That's so sweet, Stephen. You know me, I joke. Mr. Traditional. The day of the meeting with the Thompsons, I'm feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. This is it, the first step toward forever with Melissa. But there's a nagging feeling in my gut, a voice whispering that maybe Jake was right. Maybe I'm stepping into something bigger than I realize. I arrive at their mansion, palms sweaty. Straightening my tie, I take a deep breath and ring the doorbell. Mr. Thompson opens the door, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Stephen, welcome. Please, come in. Their living room is all polished mahogany and leather, intimidating. Mr. Thompson gets right to business. Melissa tells us you have something to discuss. Clearing my throat, I muster up the words. Yes, sir. I love your daughter very much, and I'd like to ask for your blessing to marry her. A tense silence follows, before Mr. Thompson chuckles. A cold, humorless sound. Marriage is a serious commitment, Stephen. We need to ensure you're suitable. My stomach drops as he pulls out a thick document. What's this? I ask, taking it hesitantly. Just a formality, Mrs. Thompson chimes in. We'll need access to your complete medical records before we can consider approving this engagement. I nearly choke. I'm sorry. What? It's quite simple, Mr. Thompson says, his tone patronizing. We need to ensure there are no genetic surprises lurking in your family tree. It's for Melissa's future. I can't believe what I'm hearing. This is insane. It's a complete violation of my privacy. Now, Mrs. Thompson says icily. If you have nothing to hide, why object? Because it's none of your business. I snap, my anger rising. My medical history is between me and my doctor. Mr. Thompson's voice hardens. We only want what's best for Melissa. Surely you can understand that. I stand up, my hands shaking. I'm sorry, but this is completely unacceptable. I won't do it. Think about it, Stephen, Mr. Thompson warns. Don't throw away your future with Melissa over something so trivial. I leave, my mind racing, and head straight to Melissa's apartment. When I tell her what happened, I expect her to be outraged. But instead, she looks conflicted. Maybe they have a point, she says softly. I mean, it's not like you have anything to hide, right? I stare at her in disbelief. Melissa, are you serious right now? I just don't want to disappoint them, she mumbles. Maybe if you just comply, it'll keep the peace. I leave her place feeling betrayed and completely alone. There's only one person I can turn to. Jake. We meet at our usual bar, and I spill everything. Those manipulative bastards. Jake explodes. Who the hell do they think they are? I don't know what to do, I admit. Melissa's not even backing me up. Jake's eyes narrow. Something's not right here, man. This isn't just overprotective parents. I'm going to do some digging. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my doctor. Stephen, I'm not sure what's going on, but Mr. Thompson has been pressuring me to release your medical records. This is highly unethical, and I won't comply. But be careful. I showed the text to Jake, my hands shaking. His eyes widened. Holy, Jake whispered. Stephen, these people are dangerous. We need to figure out what they're really after. As I sat there, reality started crashing down on me. The perfect life I thought I had, the woman I loved, the future I'd been planning. It all felt like it was slipping away. And for what? Some twisted power play by the Thompsons. One thing was clear. This wasn't over, and I wasn't going down without a fight. After that night with Jake, the sense of unease wouldn't leave me. Everything I thought I knew about my relationship with Melissa started to unravel. Little things I'd brushed off before now seemed like giant red flags. Why did you cancel our weekend getaway? I asked Melissa one day. She fidgeted with her phone, avoiding eye contact. Oh, Mom and Dad are hosting a charity gala. They really want me to be there. It hit me then. How often our plans seemed to change because of her parents. How she'd always check with them before making big decisions. Even her job at that fancy marketing firm. Turns out her dad had pulled some strings. Meanwhile, Jake had been busy. He showed up at my place one night, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Stephen, you're not going to believe this, he said, laying out a pile of papers on my coffee table. Remember Melissa's sister, the one who got divorced last year? I nodded, not sure where this was going. Well, I talked to her ex-husband. Guess what? The Thompsons pulled the same stunt with him. Demanded medical records, background checks, everything. When he refused, they made his life hell until the marriage fell apart. My stomach churned. You're kidding me. That's not all. Jake's face darkened. I did some digging at your company. You know the promotion you were up for last month? The one that went to that new guy instead. A chill ran down my spine. No way. Yep. Mr. Thompson had a quiet word with the board, made you sound like a risky investment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All this time, they'd been sabotaging me behind the scenes. But why? Jake wasn't finished. The final blow came when he played me a recording. It was Mrs. Thompson's voice, crystal clear. I don't care how smart he is. Stephen's from, well, common stock. Melissa needs someone from our world, someone who understands our values. We can't have her settling for some nouveau tech boy. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All those smiles and polite conversations with her parents. It was all fake. A lie. I knew what I had to do. I invited Melissa over, laid everything out in front of her. The text from my doctor, what Jake had uncovered, even the recording of her mother. I expected shock, maybe anger at her parents. Instead, are you seriously believing all this? Melissa scoffed. Jake's always had it out for my family. He's probably making half of this up. Melissa, there's proof. I pleaded, trying to get through to her. Your parents have been manipulating us from the beginning. Her eyes narrowed. So what if they have? They're just looking out for me. God, Stephen, why are you trying to turn me against my family? It was like a veil lifted. For the first time, I saw Melissa not as the woman I loved, but as someone blindly loyal to her parents, a puppet dancing to their tune. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly. Her expression hardened. What are you saying? I'm saying it's over. We're done." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I sank onto the couch, feeling numb. Hours later, Jake found me there, staring blankly at the wall. "You okay, man?" he asked softly. I shook my head. "No, but I will be." I stood up, a new resolve filling me. Those people have been messing with people's lives for too long. It's time someone exposed them for who they really are. Jake grinned. "Now that's the Steven I know. So, what's the plan?" As we started to plot, I felt a mix of sadness and determination. My relationship with Melissa was over, but this fight, it was just beginning. The Thompsons thought they could push me around and destroy my life without consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sitting at my computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard, I took a deep breath and hit send on an email to Sarah, a journalist I'd met at a tech conference the year before. "Hey Sarah, got a tip for you. Prominent lawyer trying to illegally access medical records. Interested?" Her reply came within minutes. "Intrigued. Tell me more." I spilled everything. Mr. Thompson's demands, the pressure on my doctor, the whole sordid affair. Sarah was all over it. "This is huge, Stephen. I'm on it." While Sarah dug into Mr. Thompson's shady dealings, I turned my attention to Mrs. Thompson. Time to put my tech skills to use. It took some effort, but I managed to trace Mrs. Thompson's online activities. What I found made my jaw drop. "Jake," I said, calling him immediately. "You're not going to believe this. Remember those fancy charity galas the Thompsons are always hosting? It's all a scam. Mrs. Thompson's been siphoning off donations for years." Holy, Stephen, we've hit the motherlode. Over the next few weeks, everything unraveled. Sarah's expose on Mr. Thompson hit the front page. Prominent lawyer caught in medical records scandal. The story detailed a pattern of abuse, with Mr. Thompson using his connections to access confidential information on various people. Then came the revelations of charity fraud. The Thompsons' carefully crafted image crumbled overnight. Their phones rang off the hook, but this time it wasn't for party invitations. It was former friends distancing themselves, the Bar Association launching an investigation, and even the police asking questions. I watched it all unfold from a distance, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Then, one day, my phone buzzed. It was Melissa. "Stephen, can we talk? Please?" We met at a coffee shop. She looked different, smaller, somehow, without her parents' influence looming over her. Her eyes were red, and she looked down at her cup. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears brimming. "You were right about everything. I should have stood by you. Can we try again?" I looked at her, remembering all the good times we'd shared. But something had changed. I'd changed. "I'm sorry, Melissa," I said gently. "But no, we've both got a lot of healing to do. I think it's best if we do that separately." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. As she left, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Weeks passed, and my career took off. Turns out, when you don't have rich lawyers sabotaging you, people start to notice your work. I threw myself into my AI projects with renewed passion. "Stephen, your latest algorithm is groundbreaking," my boss said one day. "We're fast-tracking the patent." Life was good, and it got even better when Sarah called. "Hey, want to grab dinner? I've got some follow-up questions about the Thompson story." Dinner turned into drinks, and drinks turned into long conversations about everything and nothing. Before I knew it, we were dating. It was refreshing. No games, no hidden agendas. Just two people genuinely enjoying each other's company. "I'm proud of you, man," Jake said one night over beers. "You stood up for yourself, took down the bad guys, and got the girl." I laughed. When you put it like that, it sounds like a movie. Better than a movie, Jake grinned. It's real life. Looking back, I felt grateful. Grateful that I discovered the truth before it was too late. Grateful for friends like Jake who had my back. And grateful for new beginnings with someone like Sarah. The story of Stephen and the Thompsons had come to an end. Now, here's a question for you. If you were in Stephen's shoes, would you have exposed the Thompsons' unethical behavior or kept quiet to maintain your relationship with Melissa? What would you have done differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below.